It's Reiki, but not as you know it.
Well, hello, Martyn.
Hello there, Linda. It's lovely to see you.
It's freezing outside. I don't know what is going on with this weather. One minute it's okay, the next minute it's not. But I'm going to order something up. I'll be right back. I'm going to go to the bar and order something up, and I'll come right back.
Oh, come and get warm. There's a roaring fire going.
I'm back.
That was quick.
Yeah, well, there was a twinkle in the person's eye when I asked for this particular drink. I wanted something hot because I'm cold, so I ordered what I thought was a nice mug of masala chai, but that's not what it is. It's kind of like an herbal cordial of some sort. And what is it about this tavern? One minute you think you're looking at one thing or hearing one thing, and the next minute it changes to something else. This is very mystical, magical, but I'm going to drink this cordial anyway because why not?
This happens here in the Mayfairers Tavern, in as much as you come in here and you order what you want, and you may not always get what you want.
You always get what you need. So apparently, and this is quite delicious actually. Let me take another sip. It's very warming, so it's doing the trick.
Well, there you go, because sometimes we want that taste of creamy, spicy, warm chai, and actually what we need is something that is more herbal and
maybe a little bitter, but still very medicinally effective.
There you go. Definitely. And that's why whenever I have the mushroom tipple I'm having today, you always grimace.
Oh yeah, that just yeah. I don't think I could do that.
It's very medicinal too, in a lovely, slightly bitter but very calming and soothing way.
So, I've been thinking about this as I was walking in. I've heard a lot of people talking about Reiki in so many different ways. It's a curious thing because I know it very differently than most. And I'm wondering, what's your take on Reiki, but not as you know it?
I don't know how I knew you were going to ask me that, Linda, but somehow I just had an idea that may be coming up in conversation. It always amuses me in a slightly untoward, rather mischievous way when the question is asked, what is Reiki? And as I begin to speak about my experience with Reiki, I notice in those around me a slight glazing of eyes and an internal disconnect, because they're wondering what on earth is he talking about. This is mainly due to there being a limited array of a standard response when it comes to what is Reiki. Very easy to find. It's one of those few things that if you actually do a Google search on it, you will come up with the standard response, exactly what you're looking for if you are looking for that. However, I, as you know, Linda, have spent a little bit of time working with what I experience as Reiki, and teaching that, working with others, sharing that experience with them over the years. And I always say to people when I first start sharing this and working with them, I cannot explain to you what will happen on this journey. The deep transformative changes that will happen within you as a person, and the value that you will experience and achieve through these practices and perspectives. It is not until you've gone through them and come out the other end that you can look back and say, oh, now I get it. Now I understand completely what you were talking about right at the very beginning when you told me that you couldn't explain in words what I was going to experience. And there's this shared moment between us where I get it, they get it, and there's a mutual understanding that defies language, it defies words. We cannot share it in words, we can only share it in the moment. And that is magic to me. It enchants me every time it happens. So it would be just utterly magical if, when we meet in the Wayfarer's Tavern, we're able to share different layers, pulling back those layers on what Reiki means at a very deeply personal level, beyond what we are taught, beyond what we are told, beyond the standardized history and practice. So I really love this sort of exploration of everything Reiki, and sort of doing it in this completely unheard of way that people just don't recognize as sort
Well,
of...
they just don't know. That lady that I met with, I used that same approach. She was very strongly emphasizing that she was a Reiki 1, 2, and 3, do the hokey pokey and turn it all about. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, because she was really nice, but I was able to explain it to her that way, saying, that this is what you're accustomed to. This is a modality based on one person's perspective. Reiki is Reiki is Reiki. It's everywhere. You're not doing anything. It's there all the time. It's you changing. And I got that look. I got that. I've never heard that before. But doesn't it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the waterfall analogy. I think that's one of the things that I am most excited about when I think about sort of everything in the realms. And the waterfall analogy for me is like a real, it resonates so deeply. The idea of we are taught in Asui Reiki, but other Reiki modalities as well. This idea of the Reiki coming down through our heads and flowing out of our hands, feet, and eyes, and that's how we give treatment. But the idea of sunlight sort of shining through a magical glade, and the waterfall flowing through that sunlight and sparkling as it goes and lighting up in all of these lovely colors just for a moment, that to me symbolizes the way we travel through Reiki in our lifetime, from birth to death. We are those droplets of water sparkling on the way down, and it is just for a moment. It creates a sacredness and a preciousness to Reiki, which just is magical.
It's magical, and it's missing in everything for the most part. It's just a side note. It's funny because I have no training in other modalities. I've never been interested. I know plenty of people who are, which is really, I'm so thankful. At first I thought it was a disadvantage, way back. But now it's kind of like, oh, I am so glad I have knowledge of, but not practice of. I often use the Celts as an example. Like, there's plenty of wonderful things that has carried onward, and we can apply today, but not everything, because we'd be in jail.
A little bit. I'm not sure human sacrifice.
So I enjoy those that bring the value of whatever other experiences they've had outside of one therapy, when it's applied in a more expansive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the power of story. Story is at the heart of so much in life. We are constantly telling ourselves stories, and some stories empower us and lead us to enormous changes and transformations, and incredible experiences in life, and some stories repress us and they keep us small. And it's a question of asking yourself which stories you want to listen to,
Right.
because at any moment you can change the narrative, change the story. And by doing so, you create a narrative of your life which is more attuned to who you are as a person. And I think that's really, really important.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, you're talking internal polarity versus external polarity. You know, are you going to fall into default, or are you going to create within?
Exactly.
This is all Roman knows.
One of the most important aspects of the Reiki modalities is to have this sense of sacredness and sacred space.
Well, you know, it's been a challenging, actually, past couple of years. And thankfully, we have places that, although many of us feel isolated, we do have places that we can go to and find as a haven. And here's a place just like that, where you can sit comfortably, letting the outside stay where it is and really nurture what's within.
The experience of a sacred space is something that's really important, I feel, not only in our experience of the sacred, but just in everyday life. Having that sense of reverence for a place that you can go to and feel safe and feel secure. Roman nose, and particularly the tavern here with its roaring fire, it really creates that sense of a sacred space, not only because of sort of the sort of spiritual meaning of sacred, but that sense of safety, of a slight disconnect, if you like, from the stresses and the strains, and having that sense of a sacredness or an honoring, a place that creates dignity. It amazes me how profane the world is in so many ways, how we treat things as profane, as everyday, as less than. So whenever we approach things in life, we have this sort of sense of, oh, it is just this, it's just that.
I think for so many, we've forgotten the sacredness of the everyday. We've become very throwaway in our mindset. If it's not immediate gratification, it's useless. When peace and quiet and that sanctuary and security of a sacred space, you can't put a dollar value to. You can't buy that. It's something that comes from within. And I think under the circumstances of the chaos that's out there, my hope is that people are starting to look back inside in recognizing the value of the little things. It's not the milestones, it's not the goals that you achieve, it's your day-to-day honoring who you are and how you can continue to expand on that in your own sacred space. You don't need to look outside of yourself. And here in the tavern, it kind of is the epitome of that, where we can sit and reflect and have fun. That's not to say, everything has to be stuffy and, oh, don't do this, you need to do that instead. No, it's the liberation and freedom of being able to say, this is good for me. And this is why it's good for me. And I'm honoring that bit of me in hopes of other people catching that spark and recognizing the value of themselves, not in what you do or I do, but what they possess themselves when it comes across their path.
When it comes to this sense of reverence, there was a time when people, in terms of the clothes that they wore, would pass them on as their legacy to their offspring and to their family, because clothes were so expensive and so intricate in the way that they were made that most people couldn't afford to buy a lot of clothes. So they would wear them in life, and then when they died, they would pass them on so that future generations could actually wear those clothes. And there was such a reverence and such a sacredness to the clothes that people wore. And now we live in a society where We have a chain of shops in the UK called Primark, Primani, as they're known, and they are throwaway clothes. They're really cheap. People buy them, they wear them once, and then they can throw them away. And they can actually afford to buy huge amounts of these clothes, so they're always wearing something new. And clothes and clothing has become this sort of throwaway for people. And it is that sense of clothes were once sacred, and now they are profane. They are just treated as nothing, as disposable. And that sort of translates to what you were saying about having fun and enjoyment. We treat having fun as profane. It's something that's trivial and not really particularly important. But actually having fun is a sacred act. Being able to laugh and really enjoy yourself and take a moment out of the busyness of the day to really enjoy a good laugh and to have fun and to see the humor in things is a sacred act in many ways.
Right. I mean, really, when was the last time that you had a giggle explosion of, uncontrollable laughter? It's been a while for me, I must confess, and why is that? Why have we gotten to a point where we've forgotten so much of what will bring so much joy? And again, it's because we don't look inside. It's there. We just are allowing outside distractions and disruptions to lessen the value of it. It's an interesting statement you made about clothing. I mean, I can remember growing up, that was something that happened in my family where elderly family members would pass and we'd inherit some of the things. I mean, they were valuable. It wasn't like they were gold embroidered gowns or what have you, but it was something important to them. It was a special piece for them, or perhaps it's something they made. My grandmother was born in 1891, so a lot of things were handcrafted. And you talk to someone younger and maybe not so much younger, even people older, you tell them that you have pieces from family and they're like, why do you have that junk? Just throw it out. Just give it away. Just why do you have that? It's just taking space. It's part of the legacy, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's part of the remembrance and the value that gets carried through the generations of being able to say, no, this is valuable and it's special and it's sacred because it belonged to, or it's part of your heritage. And so many of us are not from where we're living right now, so a lot of other cultural information comes across that gets discarded. And why is that? Why do we throw away so much?
So each item of clothing is so representative of the person that wore that clothing in their life, and it honors them to have that piece. And it also reflects upon how important it is to remember that everyone that is alive or has lived is so important to us being here. It reminds me of how in One Therapy we have recognition of every single person that we meet is important. And every moment that they've had in their life is something to be honored and cherished and held as sacred, because even that person that really sort of upsets us in the supermarket and sort of, acts in a way which is really disrespectful, if they weren't here, our lives would be different. We would be somebody else. We would have lived a different life and had different experiences. Everything that has needed to happen for you and for I and for everyone to be exactly where they are needed to happen in that way. and honoring that and understanding it and appreciating it can help us step back and say, I know I feel frustrated in this moment, but actually when I hold these experiences as sacred, then they are so much more than I had given them credit for in the profane moment.
It's all about perspective, isn't it? It's about understanding, a certain way. Maybe it's the way you were taught, raised, part of your culture. And that's wonderful. And that's part of who we individually are. As time goes on, when we can recognize each other, aren't we shifting perspective on understanding someone else's existence and place and importance? And to your point, regardless of whether they rub you the wrong way or not, everything has a balance to it. And being able to not allow yourself to get sucked into a contractive thought process, being able to shift and expand it to a point where you can say, okay, I can understand this better now. I have a deeper understanding. And again, it brings us back to inside ourselves in that sacred space. We can create this anywhere. It's with us. It's not something that is a place necessarily. It's who we are within ourselves, interconnected with everyone. It just amazes me. I'm always fascinated. I don't know if it's the tipple or not, but it's just so many profound thoughts that just juggle through the mind, and all it takes is stopping and looking about and appreciating who you are and your sacredness. It's funny, as we're talking about it, and I'm thinking about conversations that we've had with friends, or just this type of conversation where it's important to spark each other in remembering those little sacred moments of childhood, because childhood was such a powerhouse of experience and exploration and uninhibited fun. Again, none of us come from a perfect background. And if you say you have, then I am suspicious. But there still has to be moments where you can remember something wonderful that you'll never forget. And that plays an important part in being able to bring it to the surface as adults, and being able to recall those moments to say, okay, I need to not necessarily go back there, but bring it forward. So many times people are resistant to change because they figure they have to go back and do something different. Why can't you start now? Why can't you do something? Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be gigantic. It doesn't have to be noted by anyone else but you. That you make a small change of finding that one little thing that helps you expand a little bit further. That's sacred. That's a sacred powerhouse, tapping into that little bit. And if it's a little crack that opens it up, keep poking at it to make it expand and brighter.
Absolutely, yeah. It's extraordinary, isn't it? As children, the world is so new and so big and so loud and so bright. There's so much going on, and we don't understand so much of it. The real world that we are sort of born into is so unfathomable to a child, that we have this inbuilt mechanism to keep ourselves safe and warm no matter what is happening to us in the world. We can retreat into that place. And as adults, we're even indoctrinated into this idea that is somehow to be ridiculed, whether it be, oh, that's the childish thing, put away childish things, or whether it be, they're finding their happy place. There is this accepted norm of creating the profane of something that is a sacred ability of children to find somewhere that keeps them safe and keeps them sane. And by reconnecting to that as adults and rediscovering that ability to create within us a sacred space, and then being able to replicate that in the world, in our physical environment, is something that is extremely important, particularly when the world does what we've experienced it doing over the past couple of years. Having that sacred space in our lives, both internally and in our physical world, is so important to keep us able to retreat when we need to, and when we need it for our mental and emotional and physical health. It amazes me with the town of Roman Nose, the history of Roman Nose being this place that has grown up around something so sacred and so mystical. And over time, it's become so populated with so many conflicting ideas and polarity narratives that the very purpose of that sacredness has been lost.
Yeah.
And it's ended up becoming this cobbled, bricked over, very straight-lined, rigid place where everybody is navel gazing in their own problems and their own yuck, unable to see the reality just beyond those bricks and that stone. I love the way that then translates into Reiki therapies, for example, and into Celtic Reiki, with this idea that there is a reality there. There is a heartfelt reality waiting to be experienced when we just acknowledge it and when we just witness it. But it's so cobbled over with all of the miasma of time and everything that's been said about it, that actually that's what we begin to see. We see the cobbles and the bricks, not the reality behind that. So whether it be going back to the sort of the translation of Reiki, as one of the translations of Reiki is the mysterious atmosphere. It's nothing about sort of universal energy. It's the atmosphere that one is pervaded by and experiences. Now, there are many translations, but that's one of them. Yeah. I love that idea of this mysterious atmosphere, but it's been cobbled over with sort of dogma and this is what it is and it can't
rigid
be anything
expectations
else.
Of yeah
Exactly. And so the cobbles in Reiki therapies, for example, start to sing louder than the reality behind that, which is this amazing experience, the atmosphere that we twinkle through for a brief moment. And it's the same with the Celtic history as well, in as much as so much of Celtic history is speculation and even fabrication, even down to the word Celt or Celtic, which was devised by the Romans and the Greeks as a way of describing these disparate tribes all the way across Western Europe that were seen as savages. And the word Celt is not particularly kind. It's not a kind word. It's quite derogatory.
It wasn't kind.
But actually, we know very little about the Celts because they didn't write anything down originally. It was all oral tradition. They used adornments, jewelry, artwork. To communicate and to tell their story across Europe between different tribes and between different perspectives. So we can use the archaeological record to actually dig up those adornments and that artwork to actually see glimpses into the different tribes that we know as the Celts. But in actual fact, we know so little about them. The reinvention that happened during the Victorian era That's what we know, and that's the cobbles and the brickwork which sort of represent that misunderstanding or that misinformation around what the reality is. And I think both you and I, Linda, would agree that it's not about a definitive truth, it's about one's own truth.
Right.
So when you see past the cobbles and the bricks, you begin to find your own understanding of what that was. And that perspective, that experience becomes something that's sacred to you.
Mm-hmm. It's a matter of what I was saying before. It's important to bring along what is still valuable, and not discard it and take the new as the only right way. Evolution is a wonderful thing. I mean, look where we are technologically. I mean, wow, it's amazing. But there are still plenty of things that are carried along today that technology can't touch because the value is worth carrying forward. I think that's what really fires me up with regard to introducing people to this concept of working with Reiki on a whole new level of understanding, a deeper understanding of what it really means, because it seems to bring everything forward. It brings all the value forward, and people cross that threshold and say, oh, wow, and oh, look at all this value, and oh, you're telling me there's more? Like, who wouldn't want to do that? It's an adventurer's mindset, of course. You mentioned about archaeological digs and exploring, and I think of Roman Nose as a place to visit and explore and to uncover what the mystery is and to uncover what is the history of this place.
There's lots of cobbles in Roman Nose.
There's lots of cobbles, and there's lots of shops, and there's lots of stuff to see, and
Absolutely.
and so having that never-ending story.
Yes.
There's a show about that.
Definitely. And it involves luck dragons, and I've always wanted a luck dragon.
I agree.
When we travel in the realms and we have experiences with different aspects of that twinkling in the sunlight of Reiki, when we come back to Roman Nose, we use those bricks and those cobbles to create our own understanding. Because the realms are so intangible in many ways, and the experiences that we have are so fluid and so ethereal in that respect, that we need something to anchor them into our reality and make them really valuable in life. And that's where we use those cobbles and those bricks to really cement those experiences into our reality. Not to make them rigid, not to create a sense of this is how it is and that's the way it's always going to be, but with the understanding that you are building this mysterious atmosphere, this place full of different buildings and shops and streets and places to go visit, little alleyways that you can venture down, so that they are always there if you need them, whilst you continue to live your life, walk your path, and live your life. And I just think that's really magical.
It is, and it's a stepping stone. And even as you create the cobbles and the paths, it doesn't need to stay that way. The path may get reconstructed. The path may get redesigned. It may be enhanced. It could be changed completely, but it's still a forward motion path.
Absolutely.
So the anchors are important because that's what brings it into reality.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And what amazes me is you can have a place in Roman Nose that you know really, really well, and then one day you'll go back there and it will seem completely different, like it's the first time that you're seeing it, because something has shifted within you and you're seeing those experiences from a very different perspective, and so they look so different to what they were before and how you remember them.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, and everyone knows that feeling, when you, for example, if someone's behavior seems very, for example, they have a difficult time admitting when they're wrong. That's tough. That's tough to deal with as on the receiving end, and it conjures up all these emotions. But if you take a step back and think about, why is this person this way? And come to find out, it's because they feel, if they admit that they're wrong, that they're inadequate and they're not of value, totally shifts your perspective on that person. And I think that's true as you travel through the realms. You find places that you thought you understood based on your old definitions, or perhaps your perspective at the moment. And having gone a little further and been exposed to a little bit more shifted perspectives, you go back to that same place and say, I never caught this last time. I didn't understand. I didn't realize, oh my goodness, I need to shift. So it's not even that what you understand, what you see is changing. It's you that's changing. It's you that's shifting to be able to expand further. It's not about changing someone else or something. It's about how your perspective can change to make it, easier to deal with. Or sometimes you just let it go. You think you have to hold on to something, and no, you don't. You can just let it go. There's liberation in that.
And that is so important. I think that knowledge that it's okay to let go, and to be congruent with that you're not being inauthentic when you let something go, that you are actually remaining true to yourself. And it reminds me of, I've been spending a lot of time at Sweet Syrup Trail recently, it's fairly close in the woodland realm. We don't have to travel far to get there. And when I first started to walk through the trail, maple syrup, I mean, hello. It's like nom noms. And I just wanted there to be some snow so I could flick it on the ground and freeze it and then sort of have a lollipop. This was this was sort of my idea of heaven. And it was all about that sweetness, that lightness, that joy of life, and the sort of joyousness of living. And I could never really understand why there was this sort of sense of autumn and ending and closure sort of in the trail. But because, for me, it was just all about having fun and just enjoying oneself and tasting the sweetness. But over the years, the more I've spent time in and on the Sweet Syrup Trail, the more I've come to realize that we chase sweetness in life. It is the thing that we keep going for. And we will often go for the sweet tasting thing rather than the bitter pill that we absolutely know will do us good. So we run away from the challenging experiences, the trials and the tribulations, the going into that past trauma in order to be able to reconcile it and become more authentic, living with that trauma. Using it to create a profound legacy. We don't want to do that. We just want the maple syrup. And so I actually, over time, have come to realize more and more why there is this autumnal feel, while it is the eternal autumn and the leaves are always those beautiful colors, because it is that sense of the ending of things, the approach of winter, the sense that we are finite. And part of our journey as an adventurer in this life is to recognize the trials and the tribulations, and to use the maple syrup that's there as a celebration, as a reward, as a place of coming together and celebrating our successes and our journey and our lives, but not relying on it, not using it as a crutch to take us away from the other stuff, the elements that the fell witch presents to us.
which I love the Fell Witch.
We need to do a whole conversation on the Fell Witch at some point.
I just love it. A lot of people have difficulties with it, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
if you want to get stuff percolated up, that's where you need to go.
Absolutely.
But the interesting thing about, the perpetual autumn, it is a beautiful time. It is a time of brightness and color, and I embrace it. I that's my favorite season. And it does represent the beginning of the end. But I look at it, the sweet syrup trail is you were able to enjoy all of the wonderful things that the warmer weather provided. And you've gained and lost through those months and experienced gains and losses and learned great lessons, hopefully, to be able to carry with you. The autumn represents a time for rest too, a time for celebrating all that has been, embracing all that has been, good, bad, or indifferent, and allowing the transformation. Transformation is tough when you're holding on to something that's already gone. You've got to let it go. You've got to be able to embrace that transformation and know that moving forward, the cycle is going to continue and come around again. It's a circle, it's a circle of progress. I see it as.
Yeah. And as a trail, it is designed to be moved through, to travel through.
Mm-hmm.
We can stop and rest and taste the syrup, and have these moments there, and lingering moments. But it is a trail that we walk through to get to Robertson Copse, which is this unusual place that often blindsides us because we never know what lies in Robertson Copse. One day it can be a beautiful summer's day, and the next day it can blindside us with middle of winter and be frozen over and really bitter and cold and quite nasty. But that is the nature of life. We never really know what's just around the corner.
Right.
And we end up creating a viewpoint in the face of the unknown and the unexpected, of trying to steal moments on the Sweet Syrup Trail, or we police ourselves, the robbers and the cops of Robertson Copse. We are either stealing these moments to try and claw back some joy, or we police ourselves, protecting ourselves continually against the unknown or the unexpected, when actually that can hinder us from new experience.
Right.
And knowing that that's at the end of the trail, and that's where we're heading, and that we always have this momentum through the trail, we can't stop too long in that sense of joy. It does create this sort of real sense of life and navigating life, which changes at different points in life. So when you're younger and you go to the trail, there is this sort of sense of wanting to get to the end, wanting to get to the finish line, to find out what happens.
Yeah, come on, let's go.
It's so fast and frenetic, and just want to get things done and get moving. And then as you get older, there is this sort of introspective reflection that begins to happen, that realization of how finite life is, and that sort of that beginning of the end that you mentioned. That becomes present, and it becomes poignant and nostalgic, and suddenly we don't want to sort of move to the end. It's like there's a resistance to it because we don't know what awaits us in Robertson Copse.
Right.
And we start to create all of these mechanisms of stealing moments, trying to recapture our youth, trying to steal from the past, whilst also policing ourselves, protecting ourselves from change, from the unknown, from the other. And by doing that, we actually create Robertson Copse, and we're at the end of the trail before we even know how.
Right. It's a natural progression. Yeah, it's a natural progression. I'm always in the realms. And I say that very proudly because it's my sweet syrup, you know? I too love maple sugar. It's quite delicious.
I think we need a maple tipple.
Oh, yeah, that would be really good.
Well, it's been lovely speaking to you today, Linda. I need to head back out into the realms. I think I lost a contact lens earlier on in Thicket Hollow, so I may be some time.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think I'm going to finish my whatever this drink is, and I'm actually going to be heading out and exploring a little bit more myself. There are a few places that I'd like to revisit that I've been before, but I'd like to take a look-see one more time. So until we meet again,
Have a fantastic time in the realms.
you as well. And I hope you have a spare contact, because I'm sure it's buried in the labyrinth somewhere.
And even when I find it, I may not have found it.
That is so true.
Enjoy the rest of your tipple and your time in the realms there, Linda. And until we meet again here at the tavern,
Be enchanted.
You've been listening to the It's Reiki But Not As You Know It podcast, hosted by Martyn Pentecost, originator of One Therapy, and Linda Haczynski, guide and companion to the One Therapy community. Find out more and join in the conversation at onetherapy.com, one-therapy.com. It's Reiki, but not as you know it.